Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to Synctera's webinar today. For the new folks here, welcome. And for those who've joined us for a webinar before, we're super glad to have you back. I'm your host, Tyler Jones, Synctera's content marketing and PR manager. And today we're talking about something I'm really passionate about, marketing for fintechs. There's certainly a lot that goes into marketing a fintech. Creating your ideal customer profile, investing in a marketing channel like social media or email, even choosing your tone of voice, like if you're going to go all in on puns or jokes or if you're going to be educational. But before you start sharing your innovative new fintech idea with the world, there's special legal and compliance requirements you'll need to consider since you're marketing a financial product. Things like whether or not your creative has to have special disclosures, certain sensitivities around language usage, to even what you name your products and company. So what's happening with fintech marketing today? And what happens if you don't treat your marketing like you would your product's compliance operations? Well, check out the latest news around fintech Credit Karma. Last week, the Federal Trade Commission fined Credit Karma $3 million for misleading marketing materials they published. In a quick summary, Credit Karma has said customers were pre-approved for their new credit card, but when some customers filled out their form, they weren't accepted and their credit scores were affected. The agency orders focuses on deceptive claims. See these little bubbles here in yellow where it says you're pre-approved or get a card with a warm welcome. You're pre-approved for the American Express Cash Magnet card. Yeah, that. But fortunately, you and I both have some compliance and fintech banking experts here at Synctera who are ready to help you. Introducing our Consumer Compliance Director, Danielle Harden, and Compliance and Risk Product Manager, Andres Amador, who are here today to help us walk through compliance for fintech marketing. Thanks for joining me, y'all. Do you mind sharing a brief background about your roles here at Synctera?
Thank you for having me today, Tyler. So I am Danielle Harden. I am the Director of Consumer Compliance here for Synctera, and I have been doing banking for a really long time, over 20 years. I've worked at some large institutions like JP Morgan Chase and Discover, and I've worked for some mid-sized regional banks as well. And I've taken all of that governance, risk, and compliance experience, and I've brought it in here to Synctera to help out some of our fintechs and our banks with their partnerships.
Alrighty, and I'm Andres, like Tyler said, product manager for risk and compliance here. I've been here about 2 years working on our platform and how we can help banks and fintechs partner together. Before that, doing similar for the last 10 years. So happy to be here with Danielle as well.
Awesome. Thanks again for joining me. I know I'm really excited for this one and hear and just learn today, just as a marketer myself. Just a couple of housekeeping items. If you do have any questions, folks on the call, please direct them to the Q&A tab, and we will get to those questions later on after the demo. Couple housekeeping items and agenda. We'll talk about what are regulators saying about marketing financial services today, high-level overview of fintech compliance rules and regulations, some common marketing pitfalls for fintechs, do's and don'ts, and a demo of Synctera Cases. So let's get into it. Danielle, what have regulators been saying or thinking about marketing financial services today?
Sure. So most recently, and we can kind of take a look at the things that are happening now and kind of move backwards, but recently the OCC has been talking about their strategic plan to better understand these fintech and these banking relationships and how that's going to impact the OCC's concerns about safety and soundness and about really trying to be prepared and not surprised. So one of the things that the OCC mentioned, which I really loved in their comments, was that trust, which is something that the banks have done a really good job of developing and enhancing since 2008, does sometimes bring surprise, right? And so that kind of dovetails back to some of the things you see here up on the screen, which is the CFPB's concern from August 2022, that digital marketing providers need to comply with federal consumer finance protections, right? And one of their concerns there is that with digital marketers and fintechs and kind of this this blossom of all of these, financial technological solutions for banking and financial services is that it's going to increase risk. And so they are interested, potentially, the CFPB is in examining some of those institutions. And so there just is this new mindfulness around FinTech's understanding what the risks are, what the rules are, what the regs are, understanding the reputational risk and the operational risk, just all of the kind of governance, risk, compliance atmosphere that comes with financial services products and those banking relationships. And then something that I really like to talk to even the FinTechs about when I meet with them is what you see here about the CFPB bulletin from 2012, where the CFPB is talking about service providers. So in a really high level way of thinking about these FinTech and these banking partnerships, we do kind of think of them as like service providers in a way, right? So the banks are very mindful and very interested in creating trust and strong relationships with the FinTech so that they can help them kind of mitigate the risk of those compliance, legal, reputational, operational risks that I was talking about a little bit earlier.
So just as a follow-up question, have regulators indicated any new compliance requirements that they're thinking about or may plan to roll out soon that would affect how people market financial services in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the things that the OCC was talking about in their comments when they were discussing their strategic plan. They want to understand the risk profile of these different tech solutions that are coming up, that are offering consumers different ways to do banking. They really want to understand it. Marketing is just an inherent risk in that process, right? You want to understand as a tech solution, who is your consumer and how do you reach that consumer? How do you get them interested in your products? How do you create these affinity relationships where they're using checking and savings and credit and all of these different financial relationships that we normally see with traditional brick and mortar banks? So obviously that's inherent. And as we get further into this conversation today, we'll see how those types of relationships are impacted by existing rules and regulations.
Awesome. Thanks. So Danielle, can you give us a rundown then on FinTech compliance rules and regulations to keep in mind when it comes to marketing?
Absolutely. Yeah. So what you see here are kind of the 5 high level ones that we always kind of think about when we think of marketing for financial products. There's CAN spam. CAN spam is really about rules for email advertisements, right? Not using a false or deceptive header to get that consumer's attention. It's telling them who you are. It's providing an opportunity for them to opt out and then honoring that opt out, right? So I know a lot of us, we get those emails and you say, I don't want this anymore, I'm opting out. I am not going to lie. Sometimes I've still gotten those emails. So that's a CAN spam issue for financial products. If a customer says, I don't want it, you got to allow them to opt out. And then with TCPA or the Telephone Consumer Protection Act. I hope I got that right. Those are rules for telemarketing specifically, and that is heavily around that do not call list. I know back in the day, my grandmother could not wait to get on the do not call list because she did not like getting telemarketing phone calls. And I know all of us now have been susceptible to your warranty is up for your vehicle that maybe you don't even have calls. And so what TCPA does is it provides some structure around if you're on that do not call list, they shouldn't be able to call you, and companies need to be maintaining that list. They need to be respectful of it. They need to not be blocking their phone number for when they're calling from those numbers. And then we have the Truth in Lending Act, or Reg Z, and this is only for credit products. Reg Z does not apply here for like checking or deposit account products, but it does have some rules around how you can advertise, and specifically around when you're using terms like fixed, right? And you're talking about introductory rates and things like that. Reg Z provides some technical prescription on how to approach those in terms of marketing. And then for the Truth in Savings Act, or Reg DD, here we are only talking about those deposit accounts, which are checking, saving, things like that. And there are going to be some advertising rules around what you may hear called triggering terms. One is average percentage yield. If you use that in a marketing campaign, there are some rules for then what you must disclose. And Tyler mentioned that earlier. So Reg DD is going to provide some requirements for electronic advertisements specifically for those triggering terms. So we remember that. And then UDAP, which is one of my favorites. Always consider UDAP when you're considering marketing because it is about fairness, right? It is about being unfair, deceptive, abusive with the regular consumer, right? And we always want to consider our vulnerable populations and the general consumer when we're coming up with marketing campaigns. And we're reviewing those to go, would my mother or my grandmother, would someone who's not a financially sophisticated consumer be able to understand what it is I'm marketing to them? Is this product actually obtainable? Like, with the Credit Karma example earlier, if I send you something and say, yep, you can get you're pre-approved and you're going to get this, and then you don't, that can be considered deceptive. And so those are the things that sometimes when I'm talking to fintechs, I'm kind of giving them just a little bit of guidance on. Consider your consumer and if this might be misleading or if they maybe wouldn't understand, or if you put something in really big letters in your marketing campaign and you say free, 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 but maybe it's not really free, and you put in really small letters at the bottom, not really free because it's loaded up with fees and charges and all of this other great stuff. But that can be deceptive. If you get something in the mail and it says free and then you go get it and it's not really, is that really fairness in banking? Maybe not. So those are the top 5 we consider.
Got it. So if I think about that Credit Karma example where they were using certain kind of like messaging and framing to say that they were pre-approved, the consumer was pre-approved for a credit card, that would only qualify or fall under this UDAP rules and regulation, or would that sort of marketing practice also fall under any of these other ones?
Yeah, not necessarily. So there's kind of a lot of nuance when we're dealing with financial products. It's not always just a technical requirement or one thing, right? It can kind of be layered. And so we have to be mindful of that. So we point out the deceptive piece, which is you can get this product, right? So we're thinking, okay, I'm going to go get it. I'm going to go apply for it. All right. But maybe not. Maybe the majority of consumers really cannot obtain that product. So you've got all of the UDAP stuff, but then also those of us who've done banking are familiar with compliance. We know that there may be some of that fair credit reporting impact there as well in terms of marketing a product and then not making a real firm offer of credit, right? So we have to kind of consider the risk of maybe some of the other regulations that might be layered on top of that really general UDAP concern.
Awesome. Thanks. So, Andres and Danielle, you've worked with a number of folks building on our platform. And for people who may be new to Synctera, Synctera is, we're providing a toolkit for anybody who wants to build the future of fintech. And that could include compliance help, all of the services you'd need to launch banking services and support to launch a fintech product, and then matching you up with a bank partner. You've been working with these folks who are building some of these new future of financial innovative products and such. Are there any sort of consistent mistakes or things that fintechs run into after they launch their products or are about to launch their products via our platform?
Yeah, so one of the things that, we have a great slide here. One of the things we often talk to the fintechs about is not referring to your product or to your company as a bank if you are not a licensed bank. That is the reason for that partnership with the actual bank, right? So we kind of try to explain why that creates an issue in the regulatory space. And even if you consider, the deception potentially of a customer think they're doing business with Danielle's fintech and Danielle is not the bank, right? So we kind of discourage that. Regulators don't like it so much. And that you kind of can't say whatever you want, right? So just how we talked about triggering terms, and we talked about putting things in bold letters, but then using really small letters that, folks with bad eyes like me are probably not going to see at the bottom of a really cool marketing creative. And then it's really consider about being honest and accurate and open about what your product is product is, and it's being really creative about ways to maintain that that honesty. And the biggest thing I always say is that if you promise it in a marketing creative or any type of a marketing campaign, your product or your service needs to actually deliver on that. And that's the biggest thing. Again, it goes back to, if you're say your checking product is free, then it should be free in the real world when an actual customer interfaces with it. And we want to build those relationships with the banks as well, because banks are pretty practiced at this, right? At identifying these types of issues and giving really good feedback and guidance to the fintechs on kind of how to manage that and some things to stay away from. And even, banks are going to have their own risk appetite for maybe how they want you to use their name in your partnership and your marketing, and maybe some of them don't. And so we do look to our banks and our fintechs to build these really cool, really great, strong relationships to help them balance the risk together.
I'd also add here that at a more base level, sometimes it's a surprise to fintechs that are just getting into partnership banking that, hey, your bank is going to have to review a lot of these things for regulatory purposes before it even goes out. It's something that I think maybe skipped over early on in partnerships, but is something that can become a problem, like we saw with Credit Karma. And that it's something that our platform can really help with, instead of having things go through email, approvals be one-offs at one at a time, or doing something in a Google Doc. Our platform can unify that into one place with an auditable history.
Amazing. Yeah, I think we have a demo set up for that later in this call today. Excited to have you walk that through, Andres. But y'all both make some great points, Danielle, mostly about like the bank partnership aspect, which is you need a sponsor bank to be able to launch your fintech to market and operate. And that these bank partners will have a lot of sort of guidance, but also practices in managing compliance and understanding what you can and can't do. So seems like, having that good relationship with a bank partner to not only approve your marketing materials, but also lean on them for some compliance support and get their perspective is something that is really important in these type of bank and fintech relationships. But also, importantly, like Andre said, having a process and a way to manage these partnerships in a cohesive and easy to understand, or like a practical sense. So yeah, I love those comments both. So final takeaway, any do's and don'ts for fintechs when it comes to marketing today, Danielle?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first one is going to be, do know the rules and regs that apply to your service or your product that you are marketing, and understand the medium and who your end customer, right? So if it's a consumer, or if it's a business, if it's a checking account or a savings account, all of these things matter. And you'll see my little tagline, knowing which apply helps you comply. That is just a really good thing to always remember. If you're marketing to a business, consumer protection laws may not apply. And so maybe you can be a little bit different or more creative with the language. But when you are dealing with marketing and promoting products to consumers, we do really have to be mindful of what are the rules and the regs that are going to put that structure around the marketing of that product. And then don't forget to be careful about the usage of words like free, low cost, no cost. I know that those are going to be great things to grab those consumers' attention. I love things that are free and that don't have any cost associated, but if you say it's no cost, it needs to be. That's just really the biggest thing there. And then do connect with your banking partners to build strong marketing relationships. I cannot stress that one enough as well. In my banking career, one thing that I know is that legal and compliance love to look at consumer facing materials. Sometimes it's marketing, sometimes it's talking points that phone reps will use, sometimes it is email campaigns, or even chatting features with customers. They really want to be mindful that you're not legally binding yourself or the bank or your fintech as a whole to something that you cannot do, or that legally you shouldn't be doing. And they are very practiced in knowing what all of those rules and regs are, in that very first bullet we talked about. So those strong partnerships are super important. And I always try to make sure that we're very mindful of that.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Danielle, for all of the helpful insight. I know for some of the folks on the call, that was a lot of information, and we're not expecting everybody here to be compliance specialists today. But if you would like some more info, you've got a couple of options. You can set up time with Danielle in her compliance office hours. I actually just dropped her Calendly link in the chat. Or you can join the Synctera Slack community and get access to all of our banking and fintech experts on demand with any other compliance questions you may have from this webinar. I've also dropped the Launchpass link to our Slack community. Thanks so much, Danielle and Andres. Really cool. Now we're going to turn our attention to the Synctera console and bring in Andres to show the folks on the call all of the ways that you can manage marketing compliance ops with Synctera Cases. So I'm just going to set up the scenario. Andres will be walking through how a fintech builder, in this case, Space Bank, would get their sponsor bank's approval of a marketing creative and an email they want to send out to their customers. Andres, mind taking it away?
Absolutely. I will take us into the console. So like Tyler said, we have our console here for partnership management. Marketing material review is one piece that we're going to be going over today, but as you can see here, there are a whole bunch of other case types that you can go through for risk and compliance, KYC, fraud, KYB as well. So there's definitely more to it than just marketing materials, but today's focus is the marketing materials piece. And so with marketing materials, like Tyler walked through this example, we're going to be putting out a new debit card, some new marketing for a debit card. So the first step in that will really be working with Danielle and her team around just the base pieces of it. She and her team will give you feedback around, as a fintech, around what you can't say, what looks good, what a bank will likely approve or won't approve. And then from there, you can come in here, you can create this marketing material review case. And what that's going to do is it's going to allow you to attach that material, send it over to the bank for review, and have them kind of approve or send it back for review, whatever it may be. So in this instance, like Tyler showed, we have this Space Bank example where we're saying Space Bank, free debit card for retired astronauts. I know a lot of you are probably saying, oh, we just were told we can't use bank in our materials. So that's going to be one portion of this. And then in the email piece that he also included in here, it also says low maintenance fees for a card that was noted as being a free debit card. So these are the artifacts that we're going to include as our marketing materials when we make this case. So here I've said create a new marketing materials case. We'll call this free debit card for retired astronauts. Ooh. And we'll call it this fall 2022 email campaign. And so what will happen next is you'll be able to pick which products, channels, and segments this marketing material is going to go out to. And so these are all configurable dropdowns. In this case, it's going to be a debit card. These will all be customized to your specific products, channels, and segments as you see fit. In this instance, this is going to be an email that we're going to be sending out. And then our customer segment, retirees. This is going to be for retired astronauts. Since we've decided this is going to be a fall campaign, we're going to start this. We're going to start this on the first day of fall here, and then we're going to send it all the way through to December. And we're going to end it there. From there, you can upload files. So what we'll do is we'll take those two files that we have. We're going to upload them here so that they are attached to this case and the bank can review. I'll save this case here. I'll add a note for this is for our new debit card. Save that note. And then what I'll do is I'll send this over to the bank. So when I submit this case, this will go to the bank for review. They will be able to go through, download all that information, take a review of what's been entered. So in this other tab here, I'm actually signed in as the bank. And you can see here that I have a new case that's in review for me. This is that case I just opened around that Space Bank webinar. All the example, you can see exactly what I just put in, that it's email for retirees, it's a debit card, free debit card for retirees. Bank will be able to come in here, download this image, open it up, and see what's in here. They'll be able to see immediately. It says Space Bank, free debit card. Having the word bank in there is going to be an issue. Same thing when they download this. The email that's going to be sent out, they're going to look through and see, hey, it was called free, but it does have fees, low maintenance fees in it. So what they'll end up doing is adding a note in here saying, this looks like it has fees. when you said it was free, you'll also have to remove the word bank because you're not actually a bank. So what they'll do is they'll put that note in here. They'll send it back, and instead of approving this case, in this instance, they will reject the case. They'll send it back to the FinTech for further updates. So in this now, this is back on the FinTech side. So if I come back to this here, this tab with this case, it'll appear as rejected. And so what I'll be able to do, I'll go in here, I'll see, bank said, looks like it has fees when you said it was free. Also have to remove the word bank. So what I can do here is attach an updated version here. And I'll go through, I'll update with this new, we'll call it Astrobucks. So if I update that here, save this, I can send it back and say, this has been updated, like I noted here, updated version attached, save that, send it back to the bank again. And from there, they'll be able to view again, go through and see, hey, this we have this new file here called Astrobucks. It has a better example, it doesn't say bank, just banking services for adventures on the final frontier, doesn't say free, looks a lot better. From there, they'll be able to go through and they'll approve this case. And that means your marketing material is ready to go out into production. Like I said, that's the marketing materials flow between FinTech and bank, kind of eases everything, puts everything into one place, makes it auditable. All the notes are here, all the history of it is here, including the artifacts of what was and wasn't approved. So that's kind of the piece for marketing materials. But like I said, whole bunch of other case types in here that can be reviewed, both by bank and FinTech. And I'm sure we'll have other webinars on the other case types that we can go through as well.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Andres. Super cool walkthrough. I loved how I guess, could you just talk about like the importance of having that audit trail in one easy to find place, and why a bank or a FinTech might both need to be able to look back and check out like all of the marketing materials that they escalated and got approved or didn't get approved. What's the importance of that?
Yeah, so I think Danielle kind of went over some of the importance of that earlier of, hey, a bank really does have to approve these things. And yeah, there are other ways to do this. You could send it via email, you could send it via Slack, but there's going to be a lot of documents, a lot of emails that go back and forth. Maybe someone gets dropped from an email chain and they never actually approve, or they approve something, a different format or a different version of a file. Whereas here you can see exactly like who is adding notes, who has been a reviewer, when they reviewed it, what their notes were, and all the documents that have gone back and forth for review. And if you're a bank, you can also attach files as well and say, this is exactly what we approved. This one is the one that can go out. So having that audit history, I think really helps with one, having it all in one place. And then for the audit history specifically, a bank can show to the regulators, hey, this is actually what we did. This is what we approved. And this is why it was out in the public.
While we were, well, thanks for that answer. And, one thing that was interesting that I've learned since working here is that, you can't call yourself a bank. That's really surprising, especially because as we look through and find new fintechs coming to build on Synctera, but also as a consumer going to the market today, it seems like there's a lot of these companies that have bank in their name. Danielle, do you think, is there ever like a special exception at all, like where a fintech could use bank in their name at all, or really no?
I think the regulators frown upon it, right? Because what it does is it gives the idea to the consumer that you are a bank. And if you're not, if you're not licensed as a bank, you really kind of shouldn't present yourself as one. It's kind of like me calling myself a doctor if I didn't go to medical school and I'm not licensed as a doctor. So I think the great thing about the banking partnerships with the FinTech is that, sometimes the bank will allow you to put, okay, this is Danielle's FinTech, but I am backed by XYZ bank, right? And so if the reason you're using the word bank in your marketing is because you're trying to relate to something that your consumers understand in terms of trusting my money with a bank, right? If your partnership with your sponsor bank or your banking partner allows you to use their banking name in any of your marketing campaigns, then that helps you kind of find a solution to to kind of stay out of the regulators' hair, right? So that they're not, heavily scrutinizing your marketing campaigns in a way that they might think is deceptive. But it still allows you to tap into that trust that the consumer relates to banking relationships.
Awesome. No, thanks for that helpful explanation. It's really worthwhile, and I hope that folks out there who are maybe planning to call themselves a bank definitely shy away from that right now. But we have some time to take some Q&A, and we have a couple of questions that are staged in our Q&A tab. So feel free to drop any questions that you may have for Danielle and Andres in the Q&A tab below, and I'll go ahead and read a couple of them out right now. One person asks, I used to work in marketing at a bank, and we all had to take training courses going over marketing regulation for banks. Do marketing team members at FinTechs typically need to take those courses?
Absolutely. Yeah. We work with our fintechs to help them understand kind of a compliance training plan, refer them to a partner that we use as well to kind of help them understand the risks under UDAP, help them understand those triggering terms for Reg DD and the use of annual percentage yield and things like that. So absolutely, that is something that all fintechs are going to need to make sure that they're managing so that they can understand, hey, even if they're not a bank, they need to understand the risk of financial consumer protection rules that apply to their product or service. And that gets back to my slogan of, if you know what applies, then it helps you comply. So as long as you know what the rules are and you're trained on them and you understand them, I think that's a great head start.
I love that slogan. I think, Danielle, when you're not busy being Dr. Danielle, fixing compliance issues with our fintechs, I think we need you over on the marketing team here to help you come up with, or help us come up with some of those slogans.
Yeah, I can get my Mad Men on. I can do that.
So, as a follow-up question from Grant, Danielle, you just mentioned, but there are regulations like consumer disclosures, identifying the sponsor banks, and marketing comms. Are there? Sorry, let me just rephrase that a little bit different. Are there regulations regarding consumer disclosures, like identifying the sponsor bank in marketing comms? Like, if I'm a fintech and I'm sponsored by, let's say, Space Bank, that actual chartered space bank, would I have to include that in my marketing disclosures for Astrobucks that, hey, I'm backed in by Space Bank?
Sure. So in terms of marketing, you need to be truthful and honest. But when it comes to some of those disclosures, generally speaking, the fintech is who is listed on the disclosures. But in some of them, that is the name of the actual bank. And so it's going to be dependent upon what is the product, what is the service, which rule or reg is being triggered in accordance. And then what are the specific rules around who needs to be disclosed? Is it the actual bank partner or can it be the fintech? And so we just have to have a little bit more specificity of what the use case is in the scenario so that we can help give our fintech some more specific guidance on how to execute on those requirements.
Got it. One more question for Danielle. This one is from Ron, and it's gonna be like tableside guac. I may need a second to make it. It's a long one, but Ron says he heard you mention a lot about marketing to consumers, in particular, but his history is with a B2B company that is ultimately contracted to businesses, but mostly marketed to individuals within those businesses. So let's say like marketing to CFOs that work on behalf of a business, let's say. So how does the marketing compliance piece change when marketing to individuals that operate on behalf of a business versus consumers?
Yeah, I love this question because it allows us to kind of pick apart that kind of a scenario. So even though I am an individual, but I am acting on the behalf of a business, the end product is intended and its use will be for a business. It won't be for personal use or household goods or things like that, which we see in regulation that it kind of prescribes for consumer products. It'll say something like, personal goods, household use. And that is when we trigger the consumer protection laws, right? But when we are talking about for business use, and even if Danielle is, getting a business credit card for Danielle's FinTech, those consumer protection laws are generally not going to apply. We may be wading into some other legal and regulatory waters that are not consumer protection based. So we will, have some different discussions then, but it is really super important. That's why I like that question, to understand what is the product and who is it intended for, and what's the intended use of that product. Great question.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Danielle. Looks like that's all the questions that we have so far. But feel free, folks who have joined in and listened to Danielle and Andres talk about marketing for FinTech compliance, but also how you can manage some of those marketing operations and compliance operations with Synctera. There's some options. You can reach out to Danielle's and set up some time on her calendar. I dropped that link in the chat, and you can also find that link in our Slack community. Feel free to join our Slack community, and both of those links are in the chat right now. We covered some amazing stuff today, mostly like what is the state of FinTech marketing compliance right now? What are regulators thinking about? Some common missteps, and how FinTechs should think about getting the approval from their bank sponsor before they go to market them, and how Synctera, importantly with Synctera Cases, provides an easy solution for you to manage all of those things. So Andres, Danielle, thanks so much for joining me, and appreciate the time you took today. Hope you have a good one.